Will you remark further on the bill as amended? Representative Callahan?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the underlying bill, this bill received a very lengthy hearing, a public hearing, and we listened to the Department of Environmental, DEP, come in and talk about. We listened to their bear biologist talk to us about how the bear population in Connecticut has exploded to over 1,600. In 2002, there were 67 bear sightings in 22 different towns, and the number of bear sightings and bear attacks, people going into people's homes, is steadily increasing. Today, there was a bear killed by a car in New Hartford. Yesterday, there was a bear that went into someone's home in Bloomfield. In Avon, just the other day, there was a bear that went into a bakery. We understand these are animals. They're looking for food. We don't want them to have access, but if you're cooking dinner in your house and the smell is wafting out, it'll attract bears. We know what the attractions are: garbage, other things. But all this bill does is allow people to defend themselves. And it allows farmers or agriculture to defend their crop. And that doesn't mean they see a bear wander onto the property, they can take it. It means they can talk to DEP, get a permit, and have the DEP come out and make sure they've taken every step possible to keep the bear off their property from destroying their crops. Then DEP can make a decision whether or not to issue a permit for that person to take that nuisance wildlife when the time is safe. So this is, in my opinion, after listening to all the testimony and the hearings we had in the committee meeting, it is just codifying that you can protect your property, your family, your pets, your house from a very dangerous animal. And I realize it is a very emotional subject for people, but it's just to help to protect the people of Connecticut. Now, DEP recommended that we have a bear hunt. We are only us and Rhode Island are the only two states that do not allow a bear hunt. We understand that is not on the table here. This is just basically codifying what is already law in Connecticut. So if a bear comes into your property and is going after your pet or your child, you don't have to think twice that if I protect my family or my property, I'm going to be arrested and have to face a prosecutor. This is simply doing that. We just want to make people safe as these bear sightings and bear encounters are skyrocketing in Connecticut. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Will you remark further on the bill as amended? Representative Michelle from the 146.
Thank you, Madam. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for comments on the bill as amended.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Going section by section, we'll start with Section 1 and Section 1E. I just wanted to make some comments.
Please proceed.
During the committee process, we asked why 1E was necessary in replacement of 1A. I'm not going to go into the language details, but we never were given much explanation on that. The language is quite unclear. If you look at line 93, the word threatens is questionable. If a farmer uses reasonable non-lethal efforts, and it works, but a bear is still checking the area, does not cause any damage, will the bear be considered a threat? It's not very clear. And then get killed. Line 104, the means, plural, that works. But are there several methods and times to be specified for one take? Unclear. Not very clear language. There's lots of unclear, questionable language, in my humble opinion. In Section 2C, the self-defense part, I strongly believe that we're opening up to potentially dangerous scenarios. I strongly believe that if a wild animal or actually goes after a human, and the human kills the wild animal in self-defense, I can't imagine that a human will be in trouble. So the question the necessity of that language. And I'll bring up a recent case of Old Towns in Newtown, where there was an incident, no one was harmed. Madam Speaker, the family was back inside the house, but an off-duty, experienced officer came back out of his house with an AR-15 in a residential neighborhood and shot Bobby the bear. And after deep investigation, it was declared that this was self-defense. Now, I don't know how you can call self-defense coming out of your house with an AR-15 and shooting the bear when the incident was already dealt with. So I think that this language will encourage this kind of behavior. By the way, that officer also picked up the shells. An experienced officer picks up the shells after shooting an AR-15 in a residential neighborhood. So I see this second section also to not be good language, and in my view will potentially increase bear-human conflicts. For some people, just seeing a bear is a reasonable threat. Section 3 is where I fail to understand the actual proponents of the bill. They're pushing for the bill, but yet we're seeing a weaker version of the feeding ban. Yet, this is what we're supposed to address. What is the attractant? The humans or the food? The food. So, I think Section 3 is a weak version of the feeding ban, where unintentional feeding is not at all addressed, like my good colleagues mentioned earlier. And then I'll add additional comments. Often you will read from the agency that we have an increase of population. There is no peer-reviewed scientific study showing the number of bears in our state. Yet we know there was a drought, and bears couldn't find acorns and couldn't find some of their foods. And so what's next when you can't find your food? Well, you've got the bird feeders, you've got that danger, and they risk getting close to humans to feed. Generally, bears get killed when they are near humans. There's also no black bear cub, orphan black bear cub protocol. Well, there is one. It was signed by the acting commissioner in 2015 that says an orphan black cub is considered category 4. I might be wrong on the category number, but it means basically that a black bear cub, orphan, should be treated like a nuisance bear that entered somebody's home, that broke a fence, ate a chicken. Natural behavior for a bear, maybe, if they're looking for foods. But we had language for this. We had language that offered a better feeding ban. We had language that offered to cover remediation methods in the communities where there are these issues, so that they could latch their bins and other methods. But yet, that was not considered. I'll go back to the black bear cub protocol. If a black bear cub, orphan black bear cub, is under 60 pounds or under 6 months old, they are to be euthanized. Now, is that what DEEP does? No. When the public is alert and when legislators are called by the public, the cubs get saved and get rehabbed. So it's time to change the protocol. If they don't respect their own protocol, they need to update it and change it. Madam Speaker, there's an amendment in the system that I will not call, but has some of that language. So if people want to see it, check that language. That LCO is 9017. In my humble opinion, many ignore the science. The 3 laws of ecology, the law of diversity, where the strength of an ecosystem depends and is dependent upon the diversity of species. The law of interdependence, where all species are interdependent with each other. And especially the third one, the law of finite resources, where there are limits to growth and limits to carrying capacity. This is science. In the case of bears, the attractants are the cause of the unwanted bear-human interaction. And so that is what we need to regulate and address. The numbers that we hear, if we look at the science again and the drought, and we've heard about sightings of cubs and bears, as we continue to. A lot of the litters are not 3 cubs, 2 cubs, 1 cub. Compared to other years, it sounds like there might be less cubs. So I'm not sure about the numbers. I'm not sure about how science is used there by our agency and et cetera. And then I'll try to end my comments. I have so much more comments, but I think I'll keep it at that. We need to be mindful over the expansion of our species that actually depends on a healthy environment. Hunting bears away from residential area will do nothing about habituated bears. So I thank the committee for not letting hunting language go through. And biodiversity is one of the key elements to our own survival. And I'll end it not in French, but I'll just make a roar. Wow, that was so scary. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Will you remark further on the bill as amended? Representative Anderson, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I agree with the remarks of the ranking member. I've heard it said many times in committee and other places that we're taking over we've taken over the bears' territory and kind of blaming us for the problem, when really the first bear, I believe, seen in this state in well over 100 years was 1989. And in 2017, UConn did a study, I don't know if it was peer-reviewed, that estimated our bear population, I believe, was at 800. And they also found out the bears preferred the suburbs. It was the right mixture of cover and food. Now, the numbers I trust the most in my reading is that our bear population right now is 1,000 to 1,200 bears, and the growth rate is about 5 to 7%. So I played with Excel and that would mean in 10 years, the bear population in this state will be between 1,600 and 2,400. Now, I've heard that the carrying capacity of the state, which I asked that question in committee of DEEP, is 3,000, and that surprised me, that number. Except the problem is most of the bears are west of the river and in the greater northwest corner. Much of the northwest corner, I would say, is saturated, where bear encounters are almost daily. I know about a dozen towns have enacted feeding ordinances, and I know that they've been very hard to enforce. So this will add a measure of deep enforcement. I know that there are neighborhoods in the Farmington Valley and beyond where children are afraid, parents are afraid to have their children unattended in the backyard. In my own neighborhood, some of the people are afraid to take a walk. We have them walking down the sidewalk frequently, or that people are encountering the garage. We've had a lot of chickens and goats taken, and pets. And so, as you can see, with this growing number, we have to do something. This is a public safety issue, and I ask my colleagues to support this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Hoxsall, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a question for the proponent of the amendment that is now the bill. Right in sections, or right in lines 1 through 3 of the amendment that is now the bill, it makes an exemption for domesticated cats or dogs. So the question that I have is, if I'm walking down the street and a dog begins to make its way over to me, and I could sense that it's not, it's not a friendly dog, and it's growling at me, and it looks like it wants to attack me. And I use some form of self-defense to ward the dog away, but it continues to keep coming back after me, and I'm left with no choice but to, use lethal means to protect myself. So under current law and even with the passage of this bill into law, that would be considered a crime? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Gresco?
Through you, Madam Speaker, the exclusion of domestic dogs and cats is specifically for the feeding, unintentional feeding of the domestic dog and cat under the category of intentional feeding. So hypothetically, on your back porch, if you left some food out for your dog or cat and it attracted a bear, that wouldn't be considered a violation of this. The scenario that was just explained is separate from this bill. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Hoxha?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the good proponent of the bill is saying, in other words, that the lines in the amendment that I just read only apply to the portion of the bill that deals with the feeding of the unintentional feeding of bears, and it doesn't apply to the self-defense component of the bill, and therefore whatever the current laws are in regards to the scenario that I laid out for him would apply in that case and not anything in the bill. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Gresco?
Through you, Madam Speaker, that is correct, except one edit is intentional feeding is what is being prohibited, not the unintentional. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Hoxha?
Understood. Through you, Madam Speaker, that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Representative Cavers DeGraw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to make just a few comments on the bill as fast as I possibly can. I represent Avon, I live in Avon, and I have to say, the town was referenced earlier. Just in the last month alone, we had a 74-year-old woman who was bit on her arm and her leg. A few days after that, there was a bear inside someone's home. A few days after that, we had a bear inside of a bakery. He managed to get away with 60 cupcakes. My guess is, even though I'm sure I'll be lambasted for this, he might have been Yogi. And then, after that, it's two bears at a Memorial Day parade where people are along a parade route, children, people in wheelchairs. We had our 104-year-old vet sitting there. This is not a perfect bill. I find often that, we pass bills and some people vote against because it's not a perfect bill, but it is something, and we desperately need something to help us mitigate this issue, because at some point, somebody is really gonna get harmed. As has been said before, we have habituated bears. They now associate seeing a house with food. They associate, obviously, our garbage cans with food. And there's a lot of things and a lot of education that can be done and needs to be done for people to understand that they do need to ask their trash company for reinforced trash cans. And frankly, I think we should have a grant program for municipal dumpster, to have better dumpsters like they have out west where they're locked up. But the bottom line is we have got to do something, because at some point, there's going to be more harm than a bite on an arm and a leg. And so that's what I am hopeful today with this bill, is that we are on the path to at least attempting to mitigate the issue that we're seeing. Because as I was told by DEEP, we have approximately 1,600 bears. The only thing we don't have is a real way to manage that population. We've done a great job repopulating into an environment where they were not for many, many years, but now we have to also make sure that we are protecting each and all of our citizens. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Reddington Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I have to say is that this is actually an attempt at a bear management plan. We have not done this, and that's how we got to where we are right now. And I hope that you will find in your hearts to see that this is a way to protect the people and to allow for some public safety where it pertains to bears in the state, which will benefit them as well. The bears have been, breaking into homes, and unfortunately, when DEEP arrives there and this has happened, they do have to euthanize them. I don't want to see this happening. I would much rather see the bears living in their own homes in the woods and us not having to fear that if we have a cookout or we have cooking going on in a kitchen with the windows open, that somehow people could be in peril. I find that there is a disconnect in thinking that we are not trying to have people be mindful of garbage and the bird feeder component of this. We absolutely are. I think that people need to take personal responsibility and see that they too have a hand in it, but that alone is not going to solve our problems. We will need some public service announcements, and especially in our parks departments, so that when we have people that are visiting from other states that may not be as populated with bears, that they'll be safe in our campgrounds. I think that this is a good attempt and that this is a good bill. I hope that you'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Wojcinski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am going to support this bill. The majority of citizens in Connecticut do not want to kill the bears. The majority of citizens are okay with the self-defense aspects of this bill and the protection for agriculture, which is in this bill also. However, the bill does fall short in one area. We do need a Connecticut version of the Bear Smart program, which some of the Western states use now, which teaches people how to live in bear country and how to coexist with them. Some of the things that they use in the Bear Smart program, teaching people to keep food secure, including what's in the dumpster. To you, that's discarded food. To the bear, that's a real special treat. And they don't care if your cupcakes are stale or not. They really are happy to see them. Whereas we think it's discarded food. So we have to understand this is a big, hungry animal. It will get into dumpsters. It will get into trash cans. Not to feed your pets outside. People in Connecticut aren't used to this, and they feed their dog or their cat outside, and the bear comes along, and bear's very happy to see that dog food. But in the Bear Smart states, they know not to do that. People in Connecticut are not yet accustomed to taking down their bird feeders when the bear comes out of hibernation. And when they wake up and they're very hungry and they go for the bird feeders or whatever they can find. In Bear Smart states, people know to take down their bird feeder at the tail end of winter when the bears are starting to wake up. So, to summarize, this bill provides self-defense, it provides protection for farmers, it fails to advance Bear Smart practices, and that is the shortfall in this bill. But we can always try that next year. So I would ask members here to support it and remember that we have unfinished business to make our state a Bear Smart state. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Will you remark further on the bill as amended? Will you remark further on the bill as amended? Representative D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just to be clear, I would like it to be known that I voted in favor of this bill in the Environment Committee. The reason I did so was that it was a much improved bill, the substitute language, much improved from the original language, which included the bear hunt, which was very controversial and, in my opinion, the wrong way to approach this whole problem. So I happen to live in Farmington, which has had more than its share of bear sightings over the last several years. So I am as sensitive as anyone, maybe not as sensitive as some, to this problem. This bill is better than the original bill. However, I said at the time in the Environment Committee, I hope that this bill will be improved along the way. from the time it left the committee to the time that it hits the floor. And I am sorry to have to report that I don't believe that it has been improved. And one of the reasons is we discussed it a few minutes ago when we talked about the amendment that does away with the provision regarding unintentional feeding of bears. That is a big problem, and now that problem is basically being ignored by this bill. And I think that's a mistake. So on its face, this appears to be a sensible bill, a sensible approach. My good colleague, the ranking member from New Fairfield, is probably more optimistic than I am. He talks about self-defense. And certainly we want people to be able to defend themselves when the great bodily harm is imminent. My dispute with this, a couple of provisions in this bill is not that I don't want people to be able to defend themselves. It's not that I don't want people to be able to defend their crops or their livestock. My dispute is because I think that this, the way this is written, it is subject to abuse. Once a person receives a special permit from the Deep Commissioner to take bears, if they have proven to the Commissioner's satisfaction that great harm has come to their crops or livestock, what is to prevent that person from abusing that permit and shooting a bear, any bear that happens upon his or her property? I think that's problematic. And similarly, the provision that talks about lines 129 through 135, it's permissible to use deadly physical force to kill a bear if imminent harm or death is imminent. That's all well and good, but again, I fear, and again, I'm probably more pessimistic than my good colleague. I fear that this it will be subject to abuse, and I guess we'll have to see how that plays out, Mr. Speaker. So just to finish up and to follow up on what some of my colleagues had mentioned, we have a bear problem. I don't believe that we need to manage the bears. I believe that we need to manage the interactions between humans and bears. And there are ways to do this. Some of them have been tried. Some of them, as my good colleague from Wallingford pointed out, have not been tried, but have been tried and have been successfully employed in other states. So I think we have to go forward from here next year and the year after that and the year after that to try to figure out ways with the help of DEEP and other experts to minimize the interaction between bears and humans. That's the real problem, and I think this bill doesn't really get to that. But having said all that, I'm a realist. This does something. I don't think it does enough. I don't think it does it necessarily the right way, but this does something to help with the problem of interactions between humans and bears, and therefore I will be supporting this. But we can do better, and we should do better next year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Callahan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for recognizing me for the second time. And I greatly appreciate the good representative from Farmington and his remarks, and I agree. We need to have a better combination with the help from DEP to explain to people what's attracting the bears and how do we stop that. And instead of taking pictures to put on Facebook, make noise, make them unwelcome. We don't want to take these bears. But just a couple weeks ago, we had a cute little goat in here. That same goat owner from Goat Boy Soaps had a bear attack one of her goats and take it by the throat and almost kill it. I don't want that to happen to a citizen of Connecticut or people's pets or their livestock. I don't want them second guessing whether they can defend themselves or their pets or their property. And that's what this bill does. And the good representative from Farmington is 100% right. We need to do more about educating the public and making sure that those food sources are curtailed. But this is just taking away second guessing to defend what we love. And I do not want to see someone, a human being, killed here or anywhere else by a bear in Connecticut. And I think this is a good first step in helping that happen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise just to make a few comments. I also represent a part of Avon and West Hartford, And as hard and difficult as it is to think of harming a bear, I know that we had within our district, as was mentioned before, we've had so many bear-human encounters as the bears have become habituated. The frustrating part is that there's so much that we can do, and I think that's what is really frustrating about the amendment, because the unintentional feeding piece would be really important for us to address as well. But this is a problem that we can largely solve by our behaviors as humans. But at this point, their bears have come so close, and as was mentioned earlier, we do tend to take pictures where they're beautiful, we're in awe of them, but they're all over. They have been through my yard the day that I held a forum. They were in my yard, broken my fences, and it's lucky that my dog is not at the time. Fortunately, my neighbors and I all have a way of talking to each other, but we've done it in ways that are unintentional. When you have your trash out the night before, instead of putting ammonia on that trash or leaving it in until early morning and you have to get up a little earlier to take it out, there are things we can do. But until we are at that point, and we can still work on doing these kinds of things, we have to protect people because bears are dangerous. And we've had a child who was hurt before. We've had 3 encounters, and I sure would hate for us to be here because someone was seriously injured until we're able to do something about human behaviors and habituated bears. So this is, to me, something that is the responsible thing to do, as difficult as it is. I do want to tighten it up, so hopefully people will not take advantage, but I do think it's called for at this particular time. Thank you so much. So I will be supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Will you remark further on the bill as amended? Will you remark further on the bill as amended? If not, will staff and guests please come to the well of the House? Will members please take their seats? The machine will be open.
The House of Representatives is voting by roll. Members to the chamber or to your portals. The House of Representatives is voting by roll. Members to the chamber or to your portals.
Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Will members please check the board to determine if your vote is properly cast? If all the members have voted, the machine will be locked. The clerk will take a tally. The clerk will please announce the tally.
Senate Bill 1148 is amended by Senate A, total number voting 147, necessary for passage 74. Those voting A, 115. Those voting A, 32. Absent not voting 4.